let's say they're different, but they're not better. And instead
Yeah.
of looking at men as not better, I started looking at what do women really bring a team, an organization, our country, our families, then we aren't really paying attention to.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to In the Den. On today's episode of the In the Den, I am joined by Greg Aden of Aden Leadership. Greg helps professionals define themselves as influential leaders and is also widely recognized as one of the most prolific franchise sales and development directors in the hospitality sector. Greg, welcome to In the Den. Can you tell us a little bit more about your background and what you do?
Sure. Thanks for having me, CJ. I appreciate it. I guess the background is 32 years of hospitality. As you mentioned, I did well when I was in the role of regional director of franchise development, which is basically helping people buy and sell hotel franchises for what was at the time the world's largest hotel company, IHG. Before that, I've always been in hospitality. I had a few years in financial services, helped build a company in Dallas, Texas, which is kind of interesting because it was my first entree into entrepreneurship. Frankly, I was helping two gentlemen build a company from the ground up, and my role was recruiting, training, and really putting together our premier partners. But today, I run a company that really is all about helping leaders become better leaders, so everyone around him or her can get better.
Okay, well, let's dive a little bit into that because with such an extensive background in hospitality and now making a transition, let's talk a little bit about your path to get there and kind of where you decided to change your sense of purpose or, that evolution there.
Sure. Yeah, it was fairly straightforward, CJ. I was at the pinnacle of my career. I was literally couldn't go any further into my role. But I was starting to wonder, as I had recently gotten married, we had adopted a little guy from Russia. We accidentally got pregnant. And oh, by the way, I was 18,000 feet up a big mountain in Argentina. And it dawned on me, or I should say it hit me. It hit me right in the gut, frankly. And you don't sleep very well at that elevation. And you start to think and question a lot of stuff. And frankly, I was wondering, what am I really doing? And then from an arrogant standpoint or ego standpoint, I had left a pregnant wife and adopted son at home, and I'm here in Argentina. So again, judge me as you wish. I've been through that. But long story short, I came home and I said, why am I really here? What is my purpose? Not just as a title, but why am I as a man on this earth? And to shorten the story down, I realized right away it wasn't about helping people buy and sell franchises of hotels. It wasn't about making a lot of money and being recognized, blah, 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 blah. So when I found my true purpose, I was already starting to figure out what's the difference between good leaders and great leaders. And I started to become very interested in this topic called servant leadership. And I inquired deeply into the people I knew at IHG before I left. What do you believe servant leadership means? And it's interesting that a lot of people didn't know about the topic, and or they thought it was all about being kind of passive or appeasing people, being service, which is interesting coming from the service industry. But that was the crux of my shift. And I would say finding my purpose has been an evolving joy, an evolving journey. And I would invite everybody to ask yourself occasionally, what is your purpose? Why are you here? And it's a big question, especially when you have a big job and a great big family, blah, blah, blah. But what do you really want to be remembered as? And it wasn't going to be the world's greatest franchise salesperson. I guarantee you that.
Well, speaking of Aden Leadership and kind of its inception, our listeners may not know what all you do and kind of who all you serve. And I know for me, one of the reasons why, I had reached out to you is because you have a session coming up that really kind of speaks to women in leadership. But before we get into that, can you tell me a little bit about the full array of, trainings and sessions that you guys have that you are currently doing?
Absolutely. And I stand behind what I said earlier, servant leadership in general. So that's kind of that's the crux of what we do is how do leaders become more passionate leaders? How do we become more vulnerable leaders? How do we start with why, so to speak, to coin a phrase that Simon Sinek has made famous? But it really starts with the interview before a facilitation. For instance, if there's a team out there of 10, 15, 25 people, I meet with everybody personally or on Zoom nowadays and find out what is the why of our retreat, for instance. So you have a team that wants to get together better, more cohesive, less dysfunctional, more communicative, more vulnerable, more open. And dare I say, we focus on the culture. How is it today, and what do we want to make it better for tomorrow? So in general, if there are teams out there that want to come together better, I would help them in the beginning with interviews, a facilitation. Then I would end up one-on-one coaching them in between maybe the next retreat. So that's one. I do one-on-one coaching as an executive coach, certified, so I do a lot of that. And then I keynote speak here and there, and I hold a room of a one-off. Let's say there's 60 to 100 people. I would come in and instead of just talk to them, I like to facilitate the big room, get down on the floor, so to speak, or down off the stage, is what I'm trying to say, and facilitate the table talk. And what is it we really can bring out in just 2.5 hours as a group of men and women, leaders within the organization? What can we leave here as a something we will do different and or better so that our relationships are better, our teams are stronger, and our organization is more valuable? So that's kind of the array of it. And then to answer your question, as you said at the end, I have this joy or this spirit of collaboration. And CJ, when you and I first met, I said I was hosting a leadership development series, and that comes from just a lot of hospitality background. I love the meeting planning aspect, but I love bringing good people together to create great things so that the whole thousands of people can benefit from it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. And it was so intriguing when we were talking to kind of learn about the different types of leaders that you work with and, all of the different events, whether they are in person or via Zoom that you have going on. Now, since this is a She Handles It takeover, kind of my version of In the Den, let's talk a little bit about what you're doing to uplift women in the industry and how you're working more with, women leadership to really kind of help them evolve and find their comfort zone when it comes to leadership.
Yeah, and that's probably the $1 million question, because early on, and by the way, I help lots of different women in different industries. I just have a love for the industry that has served me so well for so many years. But it started when I was probably a sophomore in high school, and I had a very competitive dad. He had remarried a woman who was very powerful. Her name's Connie Aden. She was president of ABWA. For those who don't know, it's American Business Women's Association. And I was a little arrogant back in the day, and I was a little sure that men were different, maybe even better than women back in the day. And let's just say Connie, all of 4'11" of her, sat me down one day and said, "Greg, you're going to need to shift something, or we're not going to be able to get along very well." And she did it in a very, very nice way. And she basically said, "You will learn sooner than later that men and women are not only equal, but there's a lot of things that women do so much better than men, and we just don't talk about it." And she actually helped me finish. In high school, I wrote a paper on the difference between women and men managers. And then in college, I did a larger version of that. And she set up all the interviews for me, and it was very insightful. So I guess my heart was opened up early enough to where I didn't grow up to be an arrogant, and especially towards why men are different. Let's say they're different, but they're not better. And instead of looking at men as not better, I started looking at what do women really bring a team, an organization, our country, our families, then we aren't really paying attention to. So yes, the slap in the face, so to speak, really helped. But it's really curiosity that I would invite more men to have, especially those that have the problem of getting over themselves. So
yeah, no.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I see something very similar. I myself, I'm 5'1", so I'm probably similar to Connie in that regard. But I was lucky enough in my life to have a father that kind of taught me from the beginning that there's, it's not only equal, but I have the ability to do just as much, if not more. And yeah, there sometimes can be physical limitations and things like that. But when I'm dealing with someone on a regular basis, I don't think of myself as a woman in this industry. And I'm sure a lot of leaders that you work with, they don't really see themselves that way. It just is a smack in the face to them when someone says, oh, well, I'm in the HVAC industry, maybe I would be better paired with, a man, project manager. And we still see that. What are some tips and tricks that you find yourself kind of giving some of those women when you are talking with them, in those one-on-ones when they're kind of up against obstacles like that?
Absolutely. And I would tell you, just within the hospitality industry alone, I've been grateful and humbled by some of the best leaders I've met. And they're women. And they're so confident, they're so powerful, but they do it in a humble and vulnerable way that men will, unless they really try, are never going to figure it out. So there really isn't a tip and a trick. It is the way I coach everybody, CJ, is I ask them, what are you aware of? Then are your strengths. What are you aware of? Then something that might be holding you back. Now, holding you back might mean something different to you than it might be Britt or myself or anybody else that I've come in contact with recently. But what is it that you believe you need to shift in order to, and then order to, or so that, where do you want to go? Who do you want to be? How do you want to be seen? So I listen for all of that, and then we put a plan together, and I try and get them from where they are to where it is they really want to be. Now, is that a title? Is that a position change? It could be. Could it be a different company? Could it be working in a different area? Or recognizing that where you are now, the ceiling isn't going to change. And again, we can talk politics all day. We can talk about a man-run business, but I think it's BS that there's any industry that is just for men. That's just crap. But I would also say, are there industries that are better run by women than men? Sure. And I would look to the hospitality where service and empathy and humility is crucial to the success of the hospitality industry. Again, a man that knows it very well. Sometimes we men look at things so black and white. And I don't mean diversity and inclusion and equity. Right. That's a whole nother podcast. But I would say women have a way of looking at things that bring, I don't mean color, and again, black and white. I mean color into other opportunities. How do we really see something for its completeness? And right. That's something that a lot of women, if they believe that, and they believe in themselves, and sometimes if they're married to somebody that doesn't have their head in the you-know-where, then she has the confidence, she already has the tools and the skills, but who gives her that opportunity? And then I would say, here's where my coaching comes in. Are you waiting for someone to give you an opportunity, or are you going to take an opportunity that's right there in front of you?
Yeah, one of the things that a lot of women that I work with that are kind of looking to get into management and leadership positions that they bring up all the time is kind of the B word versus passionate, right? So I think that that's still a stigma that is around, is where, if a woman is passionate and she is assertive and she is confident in what she's doing and she's, running a team and telling them what needs to get done, a lot of times that label kind of comes into play. And I don't know if this aligns with you, but I, tell people don't be afraid of that, because they're only thinking that right now because they're not aware of what you're capable of, what you're trying to accomplish. They don't see your vision. They don't know where you're at. Just keep pushing through, and eventually your skill set, your accomplishments will speak for itself. Is that something that you see when you're talking with people too? Is that fear that if I push too hard, they're gonna, put a label on me?
Well, I call that limiting beliefs. And that's, again, a really beautiful topic for people to investigate. What are your limiting beliefs? Whether you're a man or woman, whether you're a 12-year-old, not knowing who you want to be, but what is limiting your beliefs? And what are those beliefs? And if you write them down and on the top of your list, my limiting belief is I don't want anyone to think I'm a B. Well, guess what? If you're confident, assertive, you get the job done, you're humble, you're kind, and you're considerate, how could anyone call you a B? Right. But then on the other side of the coin, hey, Mr. who's acting like a D,
right?
Do we allow that? Because no. Why do? And here's where I believe this conversation might get kind of fun. First of all, I would ask the women to stop wanting to be in management and live to be in leadership, because we manage process, we lead people. And when
Absolutely.
we lead people, CJ, the women can do it much better than men in a lot of areas. And you can see it all over the world. It's changing slow, but it's changing, and especially in the hospitality industry. And I want to give a shout out to Women in Travel Thrive. This group was put together solely by women, for women, to help them in the hospitality industry do one thing, and that's thrive. And yes, are there a lot of positions where, blank men need to move out of the way and retire and give someone else a chance, period? Sure. There's a lot of positions that are now being filled by people who are just as qualified, if not more qualified, and they bring a whole different view and a set of values into the organization. Not that a lot of them need to be replaced, but when they are, let's look more broadly as to who's better suited for that position. And in most cases, I'd like to say it's women, but Women in Travel Thrive and other organizations like that, and there's hundreds, are out there for women to join and say, we can do this. No, we will do this. And I'm so proud to be part of it, and love what you're doing, and would love to hear more about what it is that you bring to One SEO that has been seen as your vision of your leadership, and how are others following your lead? I know it's your podcast, not mine, but give yourself a chance to shine here.
Yeah, no, Greg, it's really simple for me, and it's things that we've already touched on. So I tend to lead by example, and that's kind of how I've lived my entire life. If I want people to take me seriously, I have to take myself seriously. If I feel like I am capable of doing something, I have to be willing to go after it. If I'm asking my employees to step in on, an issue or to get in the trenches or whatever the case may be, they know it's because I've been there, I've done that, I'm willing to do it myself. And that's really kind of the methodology that I've used. I do think empathy is a big piece of what makes me successful as, a CEO, because I have the ability to, and you had mentioned about black and white and kind of color, there's this whole world of gray. And I hate to say it, but there's not a lot of people that can live in gray. They want it to be black and white. It's yes or no, the numbers here or there. But when you're working with human capital and you're working with people, there is so much gray. Even if someone makes a mistake, it's, understanding what the mistake is, but then also having the empathy to understand that, maybe the mistake was human error, but it was as a result of something that someone has going on personally in their life, and just kind of understanding the whole picture. And I think that's been a huge piece of what has allowed me to step into this role, and why Lance, our founder, felt so comfortable turning the reins over, because again, I am leading from an area where people want to follow because they know I stand behind what it is that we're doing and what I'm saying.
Beautiful. If you could bottle that up and give it to every woman who's doubting her potential, but the simple things that you say you do is what I coach, CJ. First of all, the most powerful trait of any leader, you ask a room of 100 people, and most of them will tell you that in the top 3, it's lead by example. Not be willing to do the dirty work. I mean, that's how you got there, but be the example of someone who, as you just said, wants to follow.
Yeah.
And how many men do we know who parented and even lead today by this phrase? Do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah.
Think about that. I mean, you're not nearly as old as I am, but I can hear and love my dad, who's now passed, and other men that I've heard when visiting friends. It's like, seriously, you want to tell me what to do, but you don't take your own advice. That's even a weirder thing. And what you say about being humble and empathetic and living in gray, how we manage our lives, how we lead our lives in that gray space, that's where the juice is. That's where, when no one's looking, what decisions are we making? It's easy to decide between 50 cents or 52 cents, but what relationships are necessary in order to get it to 55 cents?
Yeah, absolutely. And I take that same, whether it's personal or professional. So you and I had talked previously about parenting, and that's kind of the same concept. I struggled really, bad connecting with my son. We were on two different wavelengths and two different levels. And I found myself in the position sometimes where I would be like, because I said so. And I had to take myself back and be like, okay, well, when I was that age, that wasn't a viable answer, right? It didn't
Right.
make sense to me. So I am like, it made me think about not just my professional life, but my personal life too. And how can I better connect with my son as a human to understand what he needs from me? And I take that same concept here at the office.
Well, you are also reminding everybody that's listening that it is you have one life. Yes, we may dress differently when we quote unquote go to work or we get on a Zoom. But we are the same man, the same woman, the same human being. We have one heart, two eyes, one nose, unless I am missing something. So
No,
how
but I would love to have a third arm.
yeah, well, God, yeah, and maybe it may be a bigger heart at times because what I'm learning as a man who has been self-aware for a long time, CJ, I'm learning I can even do more for my sons and my bride now, not even a year. And empathy keeps coming up. And having the desire, not the need, but the desire to see where is Jackson coming from? He's struggling with recognizing who he is, gender and friends and belonging, and it's a big issue for a 12-year-old.
Right.
Well, it was easy for me. I loved seventh and eighth grade. So you should be able to get through it? No, it's not
Yeah.
about me. Leaders, it's not about us. It's about the people following you. And you really want to find out what a great leader you are, ask. You ask, you look back and you look at your kids, you look next to you, you look at your family, you look at your teammates and say, how am I doing? And then
Right.
shut up and listen. Because
Yeah, I think we
they
talk
will
way too much sometimes.
Asking Jackson questions these past several months, CJ has opened up an amazing new relationship. Is it perfect? No. Will it ever be? No. Is it better? Yeah. Why? Because the only person that needed to shift made some shifts. But it came through a lot of interesting and difficult conversations. And listeners, if you're out there, do this with everybody that you say is important in your life. And this is what women do better than men. They get empathy, they get vulnerability. It's natural. So having a tough conversation with a kid, for the most part, is I don't want to say second nature, but it's more natural. And it took me a while to pull my head out, even though I thought I was pretty self-aware and say, I wonder what Jackson really needs. And
But
Tammy,
I'd say kudos to you. It's absolutely amazing. There's not enough parents in the world that I think that kind of relate them parenting to how they are as leaders. But it's the same thing. Our job as a parent is to lead our kids into their greatness and be able to be there for them in the capacity that they need. And we do. We get stuck inside our own shell sometimes and our ability to relate our experiences to what they're going through, but they're different experiences altogether. How life was when you were in seventh and eighth grade is drastically different than
oh
what
my
he's
gosh.
experiencing now.
And I look at it, it's our opportunity. It's our privilege to lead as parents. It's our privilege and opportunity to lead as men and women, organizations or teams. We don't have to. And people say, well, are leaders born or are they made? It's neither. We choose to lead. And the women who choose to lead and because they really want to versus because they have to, in my opinion, they're going to be some of the greatest leaders this country's ever seen.
Well, we got a little sidetracked with the parenting conversation, but I think it was definitely necessary. Let's switch back a little bit more to Aden leadership
Sure.
and what has changed or evolved since 2020. So, no matter what business you're in, you experience the pandemic the same way as every other business. And whether you started in the beginning or during or before, tell me a little bit. I know you have sessions that are both in person as well as virtual. What changes have you had to make over the past couple of years to keep thriving?
Yeah. And it's a dose of my own questions. What can I do to serve you better? How can I show up so that you can get the value out of our relationship? Because being in person is a nice to have. We thought it was the only way to meet. Think about the millions of dollars we're saving by not flying all over the world just to present something that you can do via Zoom. So I quickly moved to Zoom and Teams to serve my clients, period. That was the biggest shift. And I would also say that in-person meetings are now Zoom. We need to, if we want to, we treat these meetings as if you're sitting right next to me and Britt's got the camera on in somewhere else. It doesn't matter. We are here. So I got there really quickly, and I brought my clients with me. I also recognize that doing something that is all virtual for thousands of people is just as effective as filling up a room of 250 to 300 people and then broadcasting it live to others. We can bring the same content and the same intention virtually than we can in person. At least I believe that's possible. Do we all want to and need to get together more often? Sure. But you know what? It's just wasn't the time, so why fight it?
And how are you, Mark? Sorry, not to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say a lot of people hid. They felt sorry for themselves. They started to recognize that, hey, my spouse isn't the person I want to share the house with every day, all day. I get it. But I stopped asking, I stopped asking what it is that you're afraid of and what you don't want to do, but what do you want to do? And I believe that question, what do you want to do? What are you willing to do to get there? And when are you going to start? Those things have been consistent, CJ, for me since the pandemic and even before.
That's great. And like I said, the pandemic has affected everybody in very different ways, and every industry is different. And I think that that's a really good tip for listeners, is to kind of think about what can I do? How can I improve this? How can I make it better? And just realizing that this is the world that we live in.
Yeah.
It may or may not work for every single business, but being willing to try it, to go after it, to not get stuck. I read a lot of books, so I don't know exactly which one it is, but one of the things that I really got into for a while is trying to understand fear. And there's an acronym that says, false evidence appearing as real. And that's kind of how I've lived my life. I'm not afraid. I'm afraid of being afraid, right? It's more so, what do I need to do? How do I need to figure this out to move forward?
Right. And I love your acronym. And I ask my clients all the time, sometimes with 100 people in front of me and sometimes just one. I ask them, is there anyone hiding under your bed? Is there anyone in your closet? Is there really a boogeyman? The answer is no. So, but what evidence do you have of your confidence? Right. And again, I believe, CJ, language is so important. What we believe we say, what we don't believe we might not say, or we might say something that appears that we are afraid. But if we look ourselves in the mirror more often, and again, I don't mean from am I handsome or am I beautiful, but do we look in our own eyes and have a conversation with the most important person in our world? Do we then say to this person, you're afraid, you're scared, you can't do this, you'll never amount to anything? Or do you look in that beautiful person's eyes and say, you got this?
Right.
And the people behind us hear you, but even though they're not watching us talk in the mirror, because that would be weird, but I'm saying we get out of our shell and show up confidently, authentically. And when we don't have it, we ask for help. And that's another thing women do so much better than men. They raise their hand and say, I don't know. I'm unsure. What do you guys think? What should we do next?
Right. They're willing to use the village.
Well, because you can't do it by yourself. I mean, that's just leadership one-on-one. You can't lead by example if it's only you.
Oh gosh, you're preaching to the choir here. We could go on and on and on about that. Let's get a little bit into marketing and kind of some of the things that you've done to market Aden Leadership and how you're putting it out there and promoting it. How important has marketing been to you over the past couple of years with so many people not traveling as much?
It's been vital. I've hired a different person to build my website and message more cleanly. I put a lot of stock into what you do. I mean, what are people searching, and how do I show up in those search? LinkedIn marketing has been big for me. Social media, putting myself out there as a real human being instead of an arrogant person who says, if you hire me, I can make you better. No, I try and be real with my marketing, and I try and be authentic with my marketing. And because I honestly believe if we're real with ourselves, then and only then we can be real with other people. But I put a lot of stock into marketing, and I ask people to share what they believe is true about their experience with me. So my marketing comes from the mouths and hearts and minds of other people. But I would say if you want someone to do something for you, you need to ask them. Because I don't know how this lands on you, but one of my favorite phrases is, you will get 100% of what you don't ask for. And
That's deep.
it is. It really is. And I guess my question is, what are you afraid of?
Right.
And with marketing, we have an opportunity to put our real selves out there in a way that people say, this person might be exactly who I'm looking for. But if I show up all buttoned up and polished, and I'm always in my car, messing with my hair and telling people how wonderful I am, and I'm by the beach, I don't think I'm going to be connected to a lot of people who I really want to serve. Because I have an authentic heart, I want to serve authentic hearts. So marketing gives me an opportunity to connect with the people that I really want to connect to.
Yeah, and those people who are afraid, it's just like you said, if you're not doing it, you're getting nothing. So why not give it a shot, right? You're losing out not doing it, so you might as well give it a try. Now, that sounded a little bit like the final roar, but here on The Den, we do a final roar where it just kind of gives you a little bit of a soapbox to hop up and tell the audience, one big message that you want to give. But I would like to do something a little bit different with you today. I want you to talk a little bit for your final roar about what the future of Aden Leadership looks like. Where are you trying to take it? How far are you looking to drive this boat?
Beautiful. I would say one of the vehicles or one of the fuels I'm using for my boat is this leadership development series. It's a 4-part leadership development series that has 2 different topics, one a quarter. So I'm building a community. I'm building followers that want to follow one another, not me. I'm a collaborator. I bring in brilliant people to speak and have conversations. So that's really kind of my swan song. I believe in 5 to 6 years, I'm going to hand that project of leadership development series off to a group of people who want to take it to the next level. Thousands and thousands of people over the next 5 years will be involved in this. And I hope that my team and the people I bring in to speak can elevate everybody associated with it. So that's one. Secondly, I just want to continue to be a vital part of the leadership development of various companies. And I'm industry agnostic. I don't really care. Am I more popular in healthcare and financial and hospitality? Perhaps. But in my opinion, leadership is leadership is leadership. And I just want to be connected to those companies, and I will be connected to those companies who really want to make a difference and don't need gimmicks and a bunch of charts to have conversations between two humans who are looking at and trying to do the same thing. So in a long-winded way, it's more of what I'm doing with people who want to do it with me and see me as someone that's approachable so they can approach me and I can approach them. But the Leadership Development Series is a big part of who I have become, because it's all filled with collaboration to help a lot of people around the world get better. And I don't know anybody that I would want to work with, CJ, that doesn't answer this question with a yes. Do you want to become a better leader? Yes. Okay.
Absolutely.
Then the Leadership Development Series is for you. And they say, well, the marketing says you have to be more broad. Okay, yeah. Well, as you know, in the first one, it's women in leadership and the vision of young and emerging leaders. Those are our 2 topics for April.
And both of those topics are great. And I think that even more so than women, and we could have a whole nother podcast where we talk about young and emerging leadership, because there is a natural fear there, right? We're seeing people come out of college and come out of high school, and the direction is just all over the place. And there is that fear, right? The baby boomers are getting close to, not being a part of the picture anymore when it comes to being in these roles. Now we have this obligation, or at least I look at it as I have this obligation to set these young and emerging leaders up for success moving forward. So I'm excited that Aden Leadership can be a part of that. And one of the things that really caught me when you and I were speaking before is that most of the people that you have speak, they are actively leading today. They're not just on a public speaking platform. They're not just writing books and putting it out there. It's not a been there, done that scenario. They are legitimately leading today. And I think there's a lot of value in that, because that means they have the same obstacles to overcome that I do. They're dealing with the same issues that I'm dealing with on a regular basis. So that's one of the most exciting things about the sessions that you have coming up.
Thank you very much. And I believe we, and I am a baby boomer, and I am at the end getting somewhat to the end of my time as far as having significant influence. But I believe it's an opportunity, it's a privilege to look at these young leaders and say, how may I serve you? What is it you're really looking for? And some of them are shy and they're not confident, but we have to remember, whether you're Bob Hope, baby boomer, millennial, X, Y, Z, a lot of us have that same personal trait that says, I want to lead, I just don't know how. There's a beautiful opportunity. So before you leave your post or you leave an opportunity in your company, walk around your organization and see who you might serve in the last few months walking out the door that no one is noticing. No one's paying you anything else for. That's what I would ask the people listening to do as they leave. Or start your own organization for one particular type of person that you would like to coach and lead and mentor. We need more coaches and mentors out there. And I don't mean me as a leadership coach, just
no, 100%.
Men and women who have the heart to mentor. Take someone under your wing and help them get better.
I think that's a perfect final roar. And before we leave it there, Greg, I want to let people know how they can learn more about Aden Leadership, where they can go to sign up. I know One SEO put that out on our social channels. We have quite a few members that are going to be joining, but can you tell everybody how they can find out more information?
You bet. It's really easy. AdenLeadership.com is probably the best place to go. And then you go to the events page and it gives you the event that CJ and I have been talking about. My email is very simple. It's greg@AdenLeadership.com. You can find me on Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn because that's kind of where I can be kind of goofy and serious at the same time. Facebook's for me is a little bit more personal, but I'm easy to find. Aden comes up pretty easy, and it's ADEN. If you haven't, it's no A or no I in there or anything, just ADEN. But I just want to reflect back on you, CJ. When I first heard from you, and then when we first met, I immediately said to myself, now here's a sharp, intelligent woman who is not only going places, but I could tell you've been places. You have this confidence, but you seem to have been in a culture that's really allowed you to thrive. And whoever's responsible for not giving you, but supporting your decisions, give them a big hug for me, would you?
I definitely will. I have multiple people. I do have to admit, even though I don't like to give him credit, Lance, who is our founder, has been super supportive of my vision for the culture, for the company. It's been something that we've been working on for a long time. And I mentioned, my father just kind of gave me that go after it mentality. So I've been really lucky to have the support of many men in my life, but also I want to pat myself on the back too, because I did have to go through quite a bit on my own to get comfortable in my own skin, to be able to move past the worry that someone wasn't going to take me seriously, to figure out how to find out who I was going to be as a mother and as a professional. And I did have my own evolution. I did have to make changes to make myself have a level of confidence that makes me feel comfortable enough to walk in these doors every day and set the tone for how we're going to be successful for our clients. So I appreciate that, Greg, but more importantly, I appreciate what you and Aden Leadership are doing, not just for women in the industry, but for those young and emerging leaders, as well as every other leader who wants to answer that question. Yes, I do want to be a better leader.
I hope so. Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, absolutely. No, it's been a pleasure, and we could ramble on and on and on about so many different topics. I'm excited to join you on your podcast, and I hope so many of our listeners do register for the conference, because I think that it's going to be phenomenal, and I am looking forward to the future.
Thank you, CJ.
Absolutely, Greg. Have a wonderful day, and thank you so much for joining us here in the Den.
My pleasure.